Welcome to the week 2 go-to session. So this is number 2 of 4 sessions we're having this month. Thanks to the people in attendance. Tonight's session I hope is going to be shorter. Last time I think it ran about 50 minutes. I try to keep things under an hour. This one hopefully will be shorter than that. Not only because we only have 2 people present, but because a lot of what I'm going to cover is a retread of week 1. And instead of going through it all over again, I'll mostly just point you back to that first lecture. You can see my screen, so we're in week 2. For week 1, I am finishing up the 2 bio paragraphs that you guys wrote. I'm almost done with both classes. And then I'm going to move on to your summary that you wrote, where you chose an article and summarized it from the list of approved articles that were contained in this assignment. So now we're moving on to week 2. And as you can see, it's pretty similar to week 1. So you have something that's due on Wednesday. So be careful, okay? Because week 1 had a discussion-based activity where one part was due on Wednesday, but then another part was due on Sunday. Here, the whole thing is just due on Wednesday. It's this guy here, the 2.3 activity, check your flow. And then the major assignment that's due Sunday is exactly the same assignment as the one you just handed in. I will talk a little bit about it, but really it's the same darn thing, as I'll show in a few minutes. The only thing that's new is you have this grammar quiz. I believe you're given 2 or 3 attempts so you can improve. When you get the results, there are explanations for why you got an answer wrong, which you can use to try again. But here's the thing that I'm not supposed to reveal. I think you just get 100 for trying all 3 attempts. Like it doesn't matter if you top out at a 65 or a 75 or an 82. I believe everybody gets a reward gift of 100 just for trying. But anyway, don't forget about this, okay? Because it's basically a free 100 points, but it is worth 5% of your grade. I'll ask next week if that's in fact the case, okay? To see if people tried the quiz and if they did, in fact, automatically get 100, which last month struck some people as surprising. Like one student even said, "Did I really get 100 on this?" Yes. So yeah, it's kind of like freebie points. But let's talk about the 2 main activities, because this is really all I have to cover this week. So the first one is this guy here, check your flow. So let's take a look at this. This requires you to take the assignment you just handed in on Sunday nights and to do something with it. And you're going to do 2 things. First, you're going to color code it. And in the instructions, which I'll encourage you to read because I'm not going to read all the instructions out loud, but you basically have to open the summary you just handed in and color code it. Okay, so you will identify your thesis or your statement of the article's thesis, okay, because it's not really yours. But the part in your essay where you identified what the article is about or what its main point is, you'll color that in blue. Topic sentences, you'll color green. Topic sentences are usually, not always, but usually the opening sentence of one of the one of the middle paragraphs. Okay, the topic sentence is sort of like the thesis for an individual paragraph. Just as a thesis sets up the entire paper, topic sentences define an individual paragraph. So you'll color your statement of the article's main idea or thesis in blue. You will then try to identify your topic sentences, your sentences that are setting things up or defining the issue in green. These next 2, sometimes students switch around, which is not a big deal. That you're supposed to color anything that's related to evidence purple and anything that's explanation red. And yes, these 2 things can blur together, right? So there are times where the writer is explaining something, but that can also seem like evidence. Basically, don't worry too much. I'm not going to. The best thing to do is to look at the example. Every single assignment for this class comes with a completed example. So yes, the first step is to color code. The conclusion should be in pink. So if we look at the example, which I already have open, let's see, that's from last week. There we go. Okay. So again, some people learn in different ways. Some people find these lectures incredibly useful. Some people don't, which I find surprising, but okay. But this is why we have detailed instructions, and this is also why we have examples. Some people learn best just by looking at examples. So here is the exact same sample summary that was included in the week 1 activity for the summary assignment. This is a person's summary of an article dealing with the sitcom The Big Bang Theory. Matthew says, what if you don't have a piece? Well, you got to write one. Okay, so if you're playing catch up, my advice is to immediately go and watch the week 1 lecture, which can be found under the 1.2 activity, which I can't get to right now. Here we go. Okay, the lectures are always contained in the 1.2 activity. So I also sent it out as an announcement. So if you scroll through your messages or announcements, you'll see that there's a YouTube link to the video. I strongly recommend watching that because I'm sort of a hand holder. So in week 1, I gave tips on how to write the summary. I explained the summary assignment, but essentially you have to go into this activity here because that's the assignment we're talking about, the one that was just due Sunday. And there are a bunch of articles. Okay, one is on Jay-Z in the NFL, right? One's about video game addiction, Netflix, Harry Potter, hi-fi music. And you'll choose one of these articles and summarize it. There's some instructions and tips on how to write the summary, but there's also the week 1 lecture where I give very specific tips and tricks and suggestions. And it's this summary that you'll be using for this color coding activity. So yeah, if you haven't written that summary yet, I strongly suggest watching that first lecture. I mean, I know that that's not the most exciting thing to do, but I really do keep these lectures short and focused. I don't filibuster. I don't waste time. I just give people what they need. You can also watch the recording in chunks, right? So if after 10 minutes you just can't take it anymore, you can wander off, go microwave a burrito, do something, and come back and watch another 10 minutes. But get through that lecture because people who don't typically struggle with the assignments for this class. But yeah, you'll need the summary. And then the good thing is that you can still hand in the late work. Okay, there's a late penalty for doing so of 5 points per day, but still, it's best to get that assignment completed because yeah, it connects with this one as well. So first, you're going to color code. That's what we were talking about, right? So this person wrote a summary of an article about this sitcom, The Big Bang Theory. He's colored everything in blue. That's not really accurate. He should just be coloring this in blue because this is his statement of the author's thesis, right? His, meaning the author's argument is, and then explains in detail. And I talked about this in week 1, right? That the opening paragraph should mention the author's name, should explain what the article is about, such as video game addiction, and also capture what the writer's main point is. So in that video game addiction article, the author's point is that video game addiction, it may exist, but it's greatly overstated. And certainly shouldn't be treated as a disorder by the World Health Organization. Okay, so this person has colored the entire introduction in blue. I mean, it's a little bit wrong, but it's right in the sense that at least he's coloring where the thesis is in blue. And again, topic sentences are colored in green. They're usually the first sentence of a paragraph, though this is designed to make you take a close look at your writing. Do you have topic sentences in your summary? Are you sort of setting up what the paragraph is about through a clear opening sentence? And then color evidence in purple or an explanation in red. Like I said, there's some overlap there, so I don't really care that much. I'm not going to be looking at your color coding so close to see, wait a second, this should be red, not purple. And then, yeah, the conclusion. Do you have some concluding sentences in your summary? If so, color those pink. Again, refer to the instructions because it explains. Thesis in blue, topic sentence green, stuff in the middle, purple or red. Basically stuff that is not the topic sentences in purple and red. And then if you have some sort of concluding sentences, color those pink. I want to see that there's a basic logic to your color coding. And let's say that you have, oh, Matthew's saying, what if you had no main idea? Yeah, that's something you can touch on here. Okay, so there's 2 parts. First, you're going to color code, and second, you're going to write at least a 100-word reflection about this activity and what you learned from it. Were there places where you could have improved? So Matthew, you could say, yes, by doing this activity, I realized I didn't capture the author's thesis or main idea, and I should have. And this color coding activity made me realize that because I had nothing to color in blue. Okay, so yeah, take these questions seriously. And it also helps you grade wise because I don't want to double penalize. For example, if someone struggles with the summary, it's unfair to also um, take points off for the color coding because what can you do, right? If the summary is flawed in some ways, the color coding is going to reflect that. But if you've done a decent job with the color coding and your reflection notes things you could have improved on, then that's great. And you can still receive a high grade. Does that make sense? So nobody has to fear like, oh wow, I didn't do very well in the summary at all. So that means this activity is going to be a nightmare. No, this is your chance to reflect on what you've done. But it's as simple as that. Okay, it's color coding your summary and then writing a reflection. You also have an example of this person's reflection. Okay, so it's not a terribly difficult activity. That's why it's due on Wednesday, because you're just color coding and writing a 100-word reflection. You may or may not have my feedback by that point. I have until Thursday to grade everyone's week 1 work. I hope to be done sooner than that, though who knows, maybe I need Thursday to grade the last few, the last half dozen or so summaries. But I hope to power through most of them tomorrow on Wednesday. But even if you don't get my feedback, that's not necessarily a problem because I kind of like it when students have to color code and reflect without first seeing my feedback. Because my feedback can kind of hint at what they did, what they could have improved on. So, okay, is this activity pretty much clear what you need to do? The biggest issue I see here is usually people don't write the reflection. I shouldn't say most people, a few. I get a handful of people who just skip the reflection. They color code and that's it. But it's like, no, 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 you forgot this other part. Occasionally there's a person who just randomly colors, but that's not typical at all. Okay, so pretty easy peasy, guys, this activity and what needs to be done. Cool. Like I said, we're powering through because I only have one other thing to go over. And unless the two of you have lots of questions, I'm not going to say very much because here it is, the other major activity for the week. Oops. The 2.5 assignment, which is due Sunday, worth 10% of your grade, just like the week 1 assignment. They're identical. Okay, so the assignment you just completed Sunday, you're doing it again. You're doing the exact same thing again, which may not be thrilling, but it's good in the sense that you shouldn't feel lost because you're doing the exact same thing again. You're just doing it with the paired article. So if you chose the Jay-Z article in week 1, you're going to choose this Jay-Z article in week 2. Do not just randomly pick a new article. That doesn't happen often, but it sometimes does happen, where someone chose the Harry Potter article in week 1, and then in week 2, they're writing about video game addiction. And that creates problems because what we're working toward is synthesis. In week 3, you are going to speak your mind. You're going to sort of be in conversation with one of the articles. Okay, you'll choose one of the 2 articles you've summarized so far and essentially kind of respond to it. In week 4, you will write an essay in which you fold in information from both articles. And I think I mentioned this in week 1, but yeah, we want you to first understand what you've read, even at the level of minute detail, before you respond to it. I think I might have said that people are great at sharing their knee-jerk opinions. People don't hesitate to share their opinions, but there could be a bit more time spent on actually reading things, hearing what someone has to fully say before responding. And I'm not going to get political, but yeah, in this kind of charged environment, people are really ready to hit you with their opinions in comment sections after an article. I think I mentioned this, but you suddenly realize like the person didn't even read the article. So yeah, we'd like you to actually read and prove that you've read what you've chosen carefully by summarizing it to show you understand its contents before you start responding to it. So yes, we've carefully selected 5 topics, and they're sort of opposing articles, sometimes not completely opposing, but at least taking things from a completely different angle. So yeah, it's important that you stay with the same topic because this just happened last month where a student was writing a final essay about Harry Potter and video game addiction, and I had to say, well, how do those 2 things relate? Why would I ask you to read 2 entirely different articles in week 1 and week 2, and then synthesize those 2 completely different articles? I mean, I can understand why the confusion occurs, but it could have been avoided because the instructions make it clear, the lectures make it clear. The samples that are always included make it clear. So though I mean, I do understand that even I sometimes don't read instructions as fully as I should. We all cut corners, but sometimes that can lead to disaster. So make sure that you're picking the right article for week 2, okay? But once you do, you're just doing the same thing, okay? That's why the advice here is the same. And this is why I will point you to the week 1 lecture, because in week 1, I showed you this document where I listed do's and don'ts. Like, do mention the author's name early on. Do touch on the article's most important points. Do provide a concise overview. Write in third person, so you're not speaking out yet. Your voice shouldn't emerge at all, and so on. And then a list of don'ts, right? Don't write a walk through the article. Don't just cherry pick one interesting point, ignore the rest. Do not include your opinions, because that comes later. Do not quote from the article. And then I gave you a basic structure to follow, right? Where each Roman numeral represents a separate paragraph. So if this is all new to either those present or those who are watching the recording of this lecture, yeah, I would say watch that week 1 lecture, okay? And the great thing is you can skip to the part that you need. I would recommend watching the whole thing, but yeah, you can skip ahead to the part where I specifically talk about writing summaries, because I did spend a bit more time with these issues, okay? The other good news is, let's say you didn't do so well on the week 1 summary. I think I highlighted some of these things in the first lecture, but because not everybody watches the lectures, it happens. I think I said, this should be a multi-paragraph summary. Yes, it's a short piece of writing, but it should be, 3 paragraphs, 4, not just one ginormous paragraph. So let's say you made that mistake. You wrote one ginormous paragraph. It works pretty well as a summary, but yeah, it's a long slog to get through because it's just a wall of unbroken text that goes on for a page and a quarter. Well, those are things you can fix for the week 2 summary, right? It's almost like you get a redo, not of that first assignment, but you get another chance to do the same assignment kind of again, because you're just being asked to summarize all over. And even though, yeah, some students wish that the next assignment were a bit more exciting, or why are we doing the same thing all over again? In some ways it is beneficial though. And I think that should be obvious, because if you did awesome with the week 1 lecture, then do it again. Whatever you did the first time, do the same thing. And again, if you struggled the first time or you didn't do so hot, then make improvements. Okay, you'll get detailed feedback from me, but use that feedback. Take a closer look at the instructions. Take a closer look at the sample. So again, you have, I don't know if this is the same paper or if it's a different one. Okay, so same topic, Big Bang Theory, but this time the student is summarizing a completely different article on Big Bang Theory. Okay, it sort of takes the opposite stance. And again, I think the examples can be really helpful. Also, in the week 1 lecture, I showed how to create references in real time. I also said you could look just at the example and do the same thing. But yeah, I showed in real time how to, author's last name, first initial, comma, period, date information in parentheses, period, name of the article, name of the publication italicized, the words retrieved from, and then the web address. Very, very simple. And then, yeah, the indentation is opposite, right? We don't indent the first line, but we do indent any additional lines. These are called hanging indents. And it's the complete opposite of a typical paragraph where we do indent the first line, but not the other lines. Lots of students forget the indentation rule, or the fact that it should be double spaced and not single spaced. Okay, so things like that I cover in real time in the first lecture. Let's see, is there anything else I want to say? I feel like I'm giving this short shrift, but I don't know. I mean, do you really want me to repeat what I said in week 1 over again in terms of what a summary is and how you should go about structuring it and what the do's and don'ts are? Again, I'll point you just at the week 1 lecture and say it's all there. As my father and oddly enough, Puff Daddy used to say, it's all good. It's all good and it's all in the week 1 lecture. What we talked about in week 1 pretty much applies here, okay? Because it's the same assignment. Were they the same Puff Daddy and my father? No, they weren't the same person. They oddly said the same thing. My father, a 70-year-old Jewish man, said the same thing as Puff Daddy. It's all good. But yeah, look at the week 1 lecture because that's where I covered the summary in detail. So I don't know. I mean, when I said that tonight was going to be short, I imagined half an hour, not 20 minutes, but I think I've gone over what I need to go over. So I'll open things up. Questions, comments. Is there anything that you do have questions about that I did not touch on? Again, the 2 main activities are this guy here, where you'll take the summary you just wrote, color code it, and write a short reflection. You have an example to look at that's contained in the instructions. And then this guy here, which is to summarize yet another article. And I promise you, next week you do get to start sharing your thoughts. Okay, so we're not just going to endlessly ask you to summarize all month long. But like I said, there is a benefit to it, right? It may not be thrilling, but it's an awesome opportunity for people who didn't do so hot on the summary to have another crack at it. And for those people who did do well in the summary, well, just do it again, right? Easy, easy peasy. Matthew says, what is English 101 used for? You mean this class in general? Why do you have to take it? I think I touched on that in week 1, or maybe I didn't. I usually do. But am I understanding, Matthew, your question correctly? Like, why are you taking this class? Or what's its point? Okay, yeah, I used to cover this. Maybe I skipped last week because I have a nice slide that shows that like 97% of executives say that writing skills are very important, or there's a nifty quotation about the importance of writing. I might have skipped that last week. That was my mistake because I usually do touch on it. And that is to say that I usually don't really have to make the case because even though, like, I get it, people say, I'm here to study recording arts. I'm here to study digital cinematography. I'm here to study video game design. Why am I taking English? And my response is always make me an argument why you shouldn't take it, right? Or make an argument that writing is not important. You look at successful people, they can write. Like, they have strong communication skills. It's rare that you find a dummy who is very successful and cannot speak or write well. Usually people come in sometimes with their guard up, and I'm not saying that's you, Matthew, but some people are a little bit resistant to the class or they hate English class, but that's usually based on past experience, right? They had an English class that they hated, or they had a teacher who made them feel stupid, and they bring all that baggage to this class, which I get, I do, okay? But that's a separate issue from arguing against the importance of being able to write. Like, even people who vehemently say, what's the point, or why do I have to write, or why do I take English class? Like, even they, deep down inside, understand that writing is kind of important. Like, they do understand that when they see published pieces in the world, that those people can write well, and that's a skill that they wish they could have. I play piano, but I can't play guitar to save my life. And when I see guitarists, I think it's amazing if they have that skill. I think a lot of people do understand that people can write. Like, that's a skill, and it would be nice to have that skill. Again, it's really, really difficult to argue against the importance of being able to write. And because all of you are heading into professional industries, even if you don't think that writing is going to play a role, it will, okay, more than you think. And to be able to move through the world, being able to be a competent writer says a lot because people will make assumptions, fair or not, based on your ability to communicate effectively, clearly, not just in writing, but also in speaking, okay? Yeah, Charles says emails to publishers, employers, exactly. Matthew says English 101 is business writing. I write creatively. I wouldn't call this business writing. It's more straightforward writing. My background is in creative writing, fiction writing. I've taught fiction writing at the university level, elsewhere. I really don't think of these as separate. Like, even when I write feedback to students, that's exercising my writing muscles. It's an opportunity for me to use my voice because I have a very voice-driven style. So I speak to students directly, and I use my voice, and that is exercise. Like, I am using my writing muscles. I have to think about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it, and to use the conventions of grammar. Okay, and sure, creative writing is different in some ways, but not really, in the sense that it's, when you come down to it, it's all writing. Okay, sure, maybe some people enjoy one type of writing more than another, but to me, it's all writing. because that's an interest of mine. Yeah, I don't see this like stark difference. And so, I mean, I've heard that often, like I'm more interested in creative writing or I'm more interested in artistic endeavors. I get that, but to me, it's all the same. Or rather, it's not all the same, but you're using words, right? It's writing. If this writing isn't as much fun, I get that, but there's still an opportunity here um, to exercise those muscles, which will be valuable to you even as a creative writer, right? You can't avoid punctuation in creative writing. You can't avoid the rules of English. They still exist. So, okay, well, that allowed me to get on my soapbox a little bit and make the lecture a tiny bit longer. But actually, I'm glad you asked that because I usually do touch on that in week one. And the argument is always, I don't really need to make the arguments because, again, unless someone can effectively argue why it's not important to write, um, yeah, that's a difficult argument to make. Okay, guys, if you don't have questions, you don't have to hang around. I do appreciate you showing up, especially since last week I think we had 4 people. This week only 2. So hang in there. I'll encourage you to keep showing up. Next Tuesday, 7 p.m., same bat time, same bat channel. We'll do it again. I'll hang out for a bit if people do have a few questions, but if not, I guess I'll stop the recording in a bit and call it a night. Like I said, there just isn't as much to go over this week because it's largely a rehash of week 1. Okay, Charles, thank you. I'll see you next week as well. And because it looks like questions are not coming in, I am going to stop the recording now.